Good evening and welcome back to our second mayoral conversation of the day. If you joined us earlier, or welcome to this evening's conversation. Today we're going to be speaking with Councilman Brian Byrd, who's with us, and Greg Jackson, our chair-elect, will be our moderator for questions you may have for Councilman Byrd. So be thinking of questions and please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will try to get to all of them to this evening if possible. We have a few questions we want to ask of Brian as well. Brian, we also want to make sure that we take the opportunity to inform the candidates about sister cities and who we are and our importance to the city of Fort Worth. And I don't think we need to do too much of that with you, since you have been very involved over the last couple of years as a city councilman for District 3. Brian joined us in Nîmes, France, and actually signed the agreement between Fort Worth and Nîmes in Nîmes. And he also was the chair of the MedStar board when we made the donation last year. He helped facilitate the donation of the ambulance to Toluca, Mexico. His daughter has also been involved. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit, Brian, with our sister city, Bandung, Indonesia, in some of her studies. So Brian is familiar with us. Let me just remind you, though, that we have been doing this for now 36 years. We signed our ninth sister city, as you know, and our organization is the only organization in town solely dedicated to promoting Fort Worth globally and enriching our local community through international education, exchange, and commerce. Now, what you may not know, though, is that there are several organizations in Fort Worth who have kind of stepped back from taking on any kind of global role right now, but we want to really step into that arena and become a center for international relations for the city. And we think we can do that as a preferred resource on international relations because of deep, long-standing relationships with international leaders that we've developed over the years, access to local, internationally focused resources. We have subject matter expertise in protocol, international relations, and experiential global education. We have access to international networks, embassies, NGOs, and the Department of State. And you've met many of our committed volunteers. We have outcome-based programming supported by evaluation and research, personal relationships with citizens from other countries, and you also have heard me say many times that we have a long history of being the best Sister Cities program in the nation, 10 times now. So enough about us. I know y'all all came tonight to get to know Brian Byrd, so let me begin by introducing him. Brian earned a bachelor's degree in international business from the University of Texas at Austin and a medical degree from the University of Texas Health Sciences Center at San Antonio. Brian is a member of the Fort Worth City Council representing District 3. His other experience includes work as a physician and a business executive. He has served as a member of the board of directors of the Fort Worth ministry Tarrant Net, a volunteer executive pastor at Christ Fellowship Church, an area coordinator for Prison Fellowship's Angel Tree Ministry, and part of a first response medical team that traveled to Haiti following the 2010 earthquake. So Brian, you've got about 15 minutes to share with our members anything you'd like to, and then Greg will join us to ask you some more questions at the end of your presentation.
Great. Thank you, May. Hour and 15 minutes. That's all I need. Thanks for that. I hope that's all right. Okay. Appreciate y'all having me on. I'm a believer in Fort Worth Sister Cities, and I appreciate you all, the work that you do, and for allowing me to be a part of it. I just had an absolute ball in Nîmes, France, and I see Beth is on, Veronica's on, and of course, May, you were there. That was a delightful, it was more than a delightful time. It was an incredible time. And I'll just quickly tell my story, and then I'll talk a little bit about sister cities, and then we can get to some questions. Had the privilege of growing up here. My parents moved here in 1977 to buy the old Sweet Shop chocolate factory on. They moved it to 7th Street, and they bought Pangburns, and we've just always been sort of a business family. I ended up going to the University of Texas after graduating from Arlington Heights High School in '88. When we moved back here after medical training, I spent a lot of time with a former city councilman named Bill Garrison. Bill was the councilman when, gosh, I was in high school and kind of early college for District 3, where I have the privilege of serving now. And Bill would, he would say, Brian, you live in a great city. You don't quite realize it yet, but you live in a great city. And when you get older, you'll see that more. And great cities don't just happen. You have to steward them, and it takes a lot of service and time and leadership. But it's a tremendous privilege. Bill was part of the Trier, I hope I'm saying that, Germany team way back in, 89 or 90 or so, and would talk about those trips with very early on in Fort Worth Sister Cities. I quickly got into the business world after we moved back here. I started hiring physicians, and then I opened hospice companies because I love hospice care so much. And I was able to sell those interests. And in 2016, we ran for city council for the first time and somehow won that election. And I just loved it. I have just absolutely loved my time on city council. I've enjoyed this vocation more than anything that I've done professionally. And it's because of the great people that I've gotten to work with, and the great things we've gotten to see happen and see lives changed. And I've probably spent more time in the Las Vegas Trail area than anywhere else. And, bringing the first ever community center and Boys and Girls Club and food distribution. And, that sort of neighborhood revitalization. We have such fantastic neighborhoods in Fort Worth. And we have to work very, very hard to maintain those. And neighborhood revitalization for those neighborhoods that are really struggling is important to put our shoulders into, because it's where people live. We're seeing that particular area come up little by little. And now we're raising money to put a child care associate center in there so that folks can drop off their kids and get to work. I'll just talk a little bit about sister cities and my interest in international travel. My undergraduate degree was international business, and I was fascinated by the idea of why is it worth spending all that time doing trade across the globe when we could just make stuff for ourselves, right where we are, and they could make stuff for themselves, right? They are. It's expensive to ship all that and coordinate all that. And I knew the answer to it, but I loved looking at some of the theories of international trade and how when trade is opened wide, the people in both countries or multiple countries just benefit. Everybody benefits. They benefit from the richness of it. They benefit from specialization, because one group of people is better at a certain kind of product or service or way of thinking, or food, which is probably my favorite part of international travel, than another. And so we're able to take advantage of that specialization, and we're just richer, fuller, human beings, particularly when we allow ourselves to be affected by other cultures. Uh, did I mention food and wine? I want to make sure I mention food and wine. And I might mention that again. I hope that's okay. But language and music and art and ways of doing business. I remember my first job out of college, I went to work for a venture capital firm that a buddy of mine owned. And I mean, I was 22 years old. All my buddy knew was that I was cheap and he could trust me. Outside of that, I knew absolutely nothing. And he sent me to Vilnius, Lithuania. And I spent time in all three Baltic states. And we were trying to do some business there. And we had some success. You know, it was a fascinating time in our world's history because the former Soviet Union had just kind of dissolved and the walls had come down, and there was Westerners interacting with Easterners for the first time in 60 years. And there was a tremendous amount of cultural activity and business activity. But I'll never forget, and I'm going to talk just a minute about art. I got off a bus in a little town called Panevėžys, Lithuania, which is a town of about 500,000 or so. And I stepped off the bus, and in a 360 all around me, it was nothing but gray cinder block and gray concrete. There wasn't an accent color. I mean, it was bizarre how gray it was. And it was just, you know, the effect of the former Soviet Union on that part of that city. And for the first time in my life, I think, as a young man, I realized the importance of art and beauty. Art and beauty just make us better as human beings. They make us want to be better. And for me, it was experiencing the stark absence of it on that trip to really get a sense of how important that was. Just a couple of things about that I particularly appreciate about the sister cities. You know, I got to know a little bit about your academy. I think it's called the International Youth Leadership Academy, that sort of thing. And I want to talk about, when we get into the questions, about how important it is for us to tap into the strength of our international students here in Fort Worth for our own city's economic development. And what we're seeing is the cities that make the leap from where we are to where we need to go economically, they take advantage of that. And we're not yet here in Fort Worth, and we've got to do better at that. There are international students at UTA and TWU and TCU and others, and they're hungry and they're ready to go and they're talented. And other cities figure out through H-1B visas how to keep them here. But we have to be deliberate about it. We have to be intentional. And we can, because they bring so much to us. And I noticed that your leadership academy did a language immersion down in Toluca, where we were able to send that ambulance, and hopefully we can send more ambulances down there to them. I was jealous because I took a lot of French in high school and college, and tried to teach myself Spanish with Duolingo here in the last, well, it's been a few years now. And it turns out I do not have a gifting for languages. So I can kind of play around the edges on both of those languages, but once I'm with somebody who really starts rattling along, I'm just completely lost, and I need somebody who's really good, like Beth at that. So, let's see. Oh, I'll just kind of finish with this, and yeah, I'm coming up on 15 minutes. You know, y'all create a tremendous economic impact for us here in Fort Worth, and for the amount of money that the city government puts into it, it is a tremendous ratio of return for us. And we need to keep talking about that. I'm gonna be careful about promising anything here, but we need to keep talking about that and keep looking at that. And it's amazing how we can understand each other when we sit and chat. So if it's okay, Greg, I'll kind of stop there and see if you have any questions.
Great, thank you, Brian. I'm going to kind of pick up on where you just were. You were talking about tapping into our international students here locally, and so in that vein, when you think about the agenda for the city of Fort Worth with Brian Byrd as its mayor, is promoting Fort Worth internationally a part of that agenda? And if so, what are your goals related to that, other than what you were just talking about with the international student
Yeah,
involvement?
the starting with our young people like you guys are doing, and helping them become culturally astute and aware, and able to handle themselves in different cultures, to appreciate other cultures and languages, how to be gracious when they're with somebody who's not from here, and then how to do the same when they're somewhere else. Helping us understand as human beings that we naturally feel most comfortable with what we're used to, and with people who look and sound like us and smell like us, and that it's important, therefore, to be deliberate about expanding our exposure to people who are different than we are, because if we don't expose ourselves to it, we miss out on the richness that brings. It also is just healthy for us as human beings. It gets our minds off of ourselves. New trade routes, of course, right? As the mayor, we want to see Fort Worth business and commercial activity expand and grow. And new trade routes only come through new relationships. They don't just magically appear. They come through trust-built relationships that look for win-wins. And those only happen through sitting across the table with a good glass of scotch, or whatever it may be. Did I mention wine? And really enjoying each other. One of the things I learned that's unique about the United States compared to other countries is we tend to do business and then get to know each other in the United States. For the rest of the world, let's get to know each other first, and then we'll do business. And we can learn a lot about ourselves and how to do things. And just finishing back where we started, I think this international student piece is important. There's a guy named Brad Feld who studies startup communities. And he's written a number of books on entrepreneurial startup ecosystems, things like this. And he tracks the cities who have taken advantage of their international students. Because they have visas, they can really follow them along, and they know exactly, how much new capital has come into the city because of the work of these young people, whether they're computer programmers or entrepreneurs or what have you.
Very good, thank you. Brian, as you're probably aware, Fort Worth Sister Cities has programs in existence now that are being used to address diversity here in Fort Worth. Do you have any ideas on how Fort Worth Sister Cities can help the city in this area, diversity?
There was by the way, so Fort Worth is diverse. Where we're challenged is with inclusivity, right? I mean, if you look at if we just did in your mind, a survey of all the CEOs of companies, and it's mostly white guys, right? I mean, there's, and most of us can see that the income and wealth gaps run right along ethnic lines in Fort Worth. And that's just not good for us. It's just not good. One of the places for elected leadership in this process is to, first of all, elected leadership has to be sold on the power of diversity within organizations. And then elected leadership, once it's sold on it, can then convey that and educate and give vision for it. I think one of the best pieces of evidence for this was a 2019 study of the S&P 500. You may have seen it. The Wall Street Journal published it. They gave each company in the S&P 500 a diversity score for their senior management and board, right? And it was ethnic and gender diversity. The ones who were more diverse performed better. And the inverse is true. When the study authors looked at that and started peeling back the layers, they said the ones who were more diverse were better at solving problems, which makes sense, right? Hey, we used to do it this way. Let's try that, or, whatever. And they had access to more markets, right? Which makes perfect sense. And, so these kinds of little pieces of data and study, this is where I think a mayor in particular can really lead and encourage, for example, our chambers to highlight companies that are run by minorities and forward. We were able to, one of the challenges we have, I don't know if this is where this question goes or not, but one of the have here in Fort Worth is that so many of our young, talented African-American kids and Latino kids go off and get educated and they don't come back to Fort Worth. And when you ask them, well, why aren't you coming back here? They'll say, nobody looks like me. I don't want to be the only Black person in this company or whatever. And they'll say, but I do see people that look like me in Atlanta, in Dallas, in Houston. And let me tell you, this is a tremendous resource drain for us. Because these are young, talented kids, and they're not standing. Listen, if they were standing here, they'd be building business and leading our nonprofits, and they'd be our physicians and attorneys and bankers. We need them. One of the things we were able to get going, because I asked the Mayor Price, if I could study this, and I put together a team. We finished up last year, and we just kicked off what's called TCL Lead. It's a mentoring program for people in their kind of early 20s, mid 20s, African-American, Latino, and they just started a business, or, they're trying to work their way up the corporate ladder. And we're pairing them with mentors in the business district. And in our first cohort, we have 3 young people. They each had to put in some money. And in exchange, they get 6 months of one-on-one mentoring with, one of our downtown CEOs or general partners. The vision for the mentors is these young people want to prove themselves. They want to scale their businesses, but they need your network and they need your expertise, right? So give them that. That's it. This isn't a handout thing. This is just, invite them into your network as a fellow professional who's younger than you. And then I was able to sit down with the mentees, and I just said, hey, listen, we want y'all just to kill it here in Fort Worth. We want you to build big businesses, get wealthy, support our nonprofits, run for office, right? Lead, and make us better. We're very excited about this. We've handed it off to a young lady named Tia Cole, who runs her own business called the Cole Lab. She's in her 30s, a really talented young leader. And we're going to learn a lot in this first cohort, and then apply what we learned to the next one and expand it. And this is where I think, the network in sister cities can be helpful, helping us recruit both mentors and mentees. Because we want to see this program reach a wide audience. And we want this program to send a message that we want everybody here at Fort Worth to be successful, right? We want everybody getting to play a role and take advantage of our economic system that we have.
Very good. I'm going to jump over to one of a question posed by Mary Palco, because it's on this same topic of diversity. It's said that international relocation companies' litmus test for a corporate site is just to look at their sister cities. And it says everything about a city and its leaders' capacity and willingness to embrace tolerance, inclusion, diversity, and equality. What are your thoughts on, and do you agree with, and what are your thoughts on those statements?
If I were a CEO, I would find that a city with a robust Sister Cities program values all those things. All of those truths make the city healthier, and it makes for a wider group of people that then I, as a company, would be able to recruit from. It would tell me that this city gets that this city isn't just competing against other cities in North Texas. This city is competing against cities around the globe, and that this city is taking advantage of the diversity of ideas and products and services and learning. rather than being insular. So, I think it's important. The advantage of, if I somehow win this election, the advantage for the mayor of coming in with such a robust Sister Cities program is we don't have to invent anything. We don't have to start all over and set up the systems. They're already in place. There's already tremendous leadership and funding and history there. And so the mayor can come in and join in what's already going on. I've said a number of times, the mayor needs to be on an airplane once a month, basically building relationships with companies that we want to move here, or, going along with other business leaders. My background as an entrepreneur, I built hospice companies. That's what I did for the majority of my career. Being somebody as a mayor who can speak into the entrepreneurial community here as one of them, say, I've been there. I know what it's like to stay awake wondering if we're going to make payroll. You know what I mean? And then have the temerity to push through and be successful, and be able to speak into the importance of these themes that we're talking about here.
So, in following up on that, and you've addressed this a little bit, but how much value do you place on having a Sister Cities program in Fort Worth, knowing that our other major cities, you talked about Atlanta and other major cities in the United States, also have competitive Sister Cities programs to offer to their cities, the citizens of their cities.
Yeah, competition makes us all better. It makes our Sister Cities program better, and it's I'm trying not to be too repetitive here, but we as a city, we don't compete just with the other cities in North Texas or even the entire state of Texas. We compete on a global level, and we have to see ourselves that way. They say you dress like the job you want to have, and we have to think like a city that operates in the international field if we're really going to. And that means getting on airplanes. It means putting our feet where our mouth is. It means showing up for meetings. I think we stood up a brand new nonprofit in the Las Vegas Trail area. Let me tell you what, that was hard. That was hard work, and it's now on firm financial footing. And it worked great. But man, it's much more fun to do it, to partner with something that's already working so well and help that particular organization go to the next level that its leadership is wanting to see and that it has vision for.
I'm going to jump over to another question from one of our attendees. Phil Fishbane asked, because it's kind of on this same topic that we've been discussing, and is wondering if you could give some specifics on how you think Fort Worth can use the positives that you discussed, like diversity, culture, history, et cetera, to lure businesses that are looking to relocate to Texas, and bring them to Fort Worth compared to Dallas, Austin, Houston, San Antonio.
We're going to have to see our business district, whether it's downtown or other places in the city or up in Alliance, we're going to have to see it get populated with color. I think there's a place for elected leadership here to talk about diversity, to talk about race, and to do it in a way that's winsome, right? And that's positive, and that casts vision that's positive. And then when elected leadership does that, it sort of can free other people up to do the same thing. There's nothing like sitting down across from somebody and realizing, oh, wait a minute, we have a lot in common here. Somebody mentioned this, and I haven't verified that this was Lincoln. By the way, Lincoln was a giant. He was just unbelievable. but one of his comments was, I don't like that guy very much. I think I need to get to know him. And then a good one. And it's just there's probably hyperbole in there, but it makes the point that there's something about sitting down, and I always go like this. Let's see if y'all can see this. I always go like this to try to illustrate a dovetail. I don't care who you are, who you're with, you're going to have something in common that you believe in together. And you need to find that and then spend your time right there. Leadership needs to help us do that, because we're spending too much time finding the stuff we disagree on. And it doesn't really help us, in our particular, we want to continue to see our young people learn how to be critical thinkers, right? That's good. But we want them to learn how to praise things too. What's great about so-and-so or this movement or that time period in our country or other countries. So anyhow, you'll have to forgive me. I just started talking and I forgot completely what the question was, but it was some specifics. Yeah, see, you're asking a visionary for specifics, and we're really good at vision and broad brush strokes. Not so much as specific. I apologize.
I think you answered it well. Thank you. So another question for you here. Fort Worth Sister Cities is seeking to become the center for international relations for the city of Fort Worth. And so other than what Sister Cities is doing now, what things should Sister Cities consider doing that would advance your agenda for the city?
Yeah, thank you. I thought about this question. I wrote down 4 things. I'm just going to kind of read them off. Explore ways to bring international students here that are particularly talented in entrepreneurism and STEM and computing and things like this, because we want to be able to find them and we want to be able to keep them here. There's federal law that says if after graduating from college, someone who's from another country goes to work for a nonprofit, there's no cap on the number of H-1B visas that can be used. And so, hey, we're all creative enough to figure out how to keep those folks here and then turn them loose here in our entrepreneurial culture, in one of our incubators, or be a part of the accelerator program that's coming. You see, cross fingers. We really need that accelerator program here. That's going to be fantastic for us. Continue to expand to cities in the Western Hemisphere. I saw that y'all are taking some trips down, I think, to South America. I think that's fantastic, because I think is Toluca is the only city, I think, in the Western Hemisphere. And so
it is.
I think that's great to spread out through there. May mentioned our daughter Allison has spent some time in Bandung and also in Swaziland. And those were on trips that were not related to Fort Worth Sister Cities. However, they were able to tie in. She was able to meet people, a part of our Sister Cities programs there, and get to know them. Let's see. Yeah, connect our students with businesses that do international trade. International trade's cool. It's just fun, and it has an added a challenge of everything that makes it international. So currency exchanges, trade laws, and there's a school in Fort Worth called Cristo Rey. It's a sort of a new little private school, and once a week the kids spend a day working in a corporation. I just think it's powerful when they're in high school, and let's help them get involved in businesses that are doing international trade, so that they can have a love for that and then meet people and do that as a career someday. And then the last one I wrote down was help us keep our talented African-American and Latino kids in Fort Worth. But it's really all of our kids, who have choices. When they finish college and they have job offers all over the country, we want them to come back to Fort Worth. Greg, you grew up here for part of your life. I grew up here for most of my life, and it's special when you move back to the city that you grew up in, because you have particular love for it and you have memories here. I think that's where a lot of it comes from. If the memories are good, the love for the place is high, and that makes it just makes it a more richer experience for all of us when we do that.
That's great. I do have one more question from you that came from Veronica Law, and I would invite, if I know we just have a couple more minutes, but if anybody else has a question they'd like to post, please do so. Really appreciate those who have asked questions, so we can let Brian talk to us more about his thoughts and visions. So the question was, would you support increased funding for Fort Worth Sister Cities now this, it has a caveat, for a position dedicated to helping Fort Worth focus more on economic development based on its existing international relations?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, these are the Veronica, thanks for the question. And I'm going to be careful what I promise you, of course, but no, these are the kinds of problem solving ideas that we need to keep talking about. And particularly that idea, right? It wouldn't be difficult to tie an ROI to that. That's the sort of thing that can help us sell that to city management, to the other council members, but ultimately to the residents in Fort Worth.
And I think Veronica also wanted to know if you've been working on your headstand.
She knows I need
there's a story there.
Yeah, she's great at it. Carrie Moon is great at it, apparently, and I'm not very good. Look, I'm built like a giraffe. I don't know if you met me in person. I always say I'm built like a giraffe, and I have a face for radio. So doing a handstand, it didn't work for me very well. I was good at falling over. Let me put it that way.
There you go. Well, that's all the questions I have. May, if you're ready to jump back in, I know we're close to the end of our time.
Well, I'm sorry I didn't pay a whole lot of attention because I was furiously typing what you were saying, Brian, because you had some very good, some good ideas of how, we can be of more value to the city. And I hope that we'll be able to work on that. There's a close connection and always has been, but I think the opportunity right now for sister cities on a different level, it's there, and we absolutely do want to take advantage of that. So there are no more questions in the Q&A. Brian, this was just wonderful hearing your thoughts about everything. People, if there's anything else you want to say before we wrap it up, I'm happy to allow you, or I think you covered it great. So everybody, don't forget, this is our last candidates conversation. So your next job is to go out on May 1st and vote for your candidate of choice. And regardless of who that candidate is, that candidate is going to be our honorary chair. So we will work closely with them on all of our programs. So again, Brian, thank you so much I know you've had such a busy schedule over the last many months. So thank you for taking the time out to be with us. And Greg, thank you for being our moderator today. And everyone else, we will see you later.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, May.
Thank
Have a
you.
great one.
Thank you, Brian.